Greetings and salutations. My name is Michael Schwahn, and today we're going to be talking about the worst games of 2022. Now, there's a couple asterisks on there, okay? This is video number 4 in our ongoing series of gaming in 2022. The good, the bad, the ugly, the memorable, and the forgettable. We've already posted ugly, memorable, and forgettable. If you're curious about what was on those lists, they are on the channel. Now, when I say the worst games in 2022, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all just bad, because I did have fun with some of these. Not all of them, but some of them. And the other thing that I need to say is that these are the worst games that I played in 2022. Not all of these games released this year, but I played them this year. We went through over 60 games this year. Good job, me. I'm going to give myself a pat for that one. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to combine number 10 and number 9. I normally wouldn't do this, but they're very similar games that are on this list for the same reason. So this is going to be going to Horror Squad and Horror Night, formerly known as Horror Night Escape the Aowoki, which is, yes, a play on Michael Jackson, okay? And the reason that these games are on here is because neither of them work. Or at least neither of them worked when I played them. Now, I understand that you're rolling a dice when you grab an early access game, right? It's still in development, it's not finished yet, and all that kind of stuff. But there's still an expectation that a game will be playable. That you might run into some bugs and some issues or a crash or something like that, but there is an expectation that if you are paying money for a product, even if it is an early access, that it will be playable. Neither of these games are playable. They do not work. I don't know if that's still the case. I played them months ago, but they are definitely two of the worst games that I played in 2022 because they simply did not work. Bigfoot is number 8. Now, I still enjoyed this game, okay? I can't say that I didn't enjoy Bigfoot. Part of that is because I was playing it with a group of very beloved friends. And, if you have the right group, you can make almost anything fun because you're having fun with your friends, even if you're playing something bad. And I think part of that is true for Bigfoot. When we played it the first time, it was just bad. And then they did a few major updates and we went back and tried it again. And this did things like overhaul the UI and a couple of like minor mechanics here and there. And it definitely was better, but it was still bad. It had lots of potential, and it really kind of felt in a lot of ways like a good proof of concept because a lot of things within it felt gimmicky, but it definitely wasn't where I think it should have been. And I don't feel the need to go back and give it another chance because I don't believe that it'll ever achieve a level of polish that I won't feel the way about it that I do talking about it in this video. So Bigfoot's going to be number 8. Number 7 is SCP Containment Breach multiplayer. I never tried the single player. I've only played it with the same group of friends that I played Bigfoot with. And this game is janky, okay? That said, it's SCP. And while up until I played this game, I barely knew anything about SCP. This game does do a lot of good things. It does things well, which is like, it's got some very interesting puzzles in terms of how they're solved, some really weird mechanics involving how some of the SCPs function, some of the environments are very well made, and it has an actual decent progression system of like, you need to do these puzzles to get these key cards to be able to get in these rooms to do these puzzles, which will then open previous things in the complex so that you can progress further. But the game, it doesn't work very well. It's really easy to get soft locked in this game. If you die in the wrong spot, you can respawn infinitely, right? But if you die in the wrong spot and all your shit falls on the ground, it can make it where unless somebody can figure out how to get back to where you died, which you might not be able to get back there without the stuff that you died with, that you can just make it where it's impossible to win. And some of the SCPs, I understand that they are designed around the SCPs that they are, but for the purposes of gameplay, some of them are just annoying. Like, just outright annoying to where you're like, you're frustrating to deal with, to the point where it's like, no, like, I need to get away from you. It's just like, you're just not fun. And now you're spawn camping because of the way your mechanics work. It also has some stability issues. I definitely think that this one is worth a try, and I don't believe it'll actually ever get better than what it is. I'm pretty sure that most of the development on this game is largely done, but I would love to see a game just like this one that is a little bit better put together. Like, just a little bit, just got a little bit more duct tape and wires holding it together rather than just operating on gum and faith. Because I think if you could do that, this would be incredible. If this game didn't have the issues that I just described, this game would be really, really good. And even if I beat it, I'd probably want to play it again. But in the current state that it is definitely one of the worst games that I played this year. Brigandine Tales of Runnersia. Now, if you haven't heard of this game, that's fine. That's okay. You're not missing anything. Now, that said, I got this game. I got a physical copy of it because it was on sale from Limited Run Games, which does physical versions of digital-only games. This does have a physical version that wasn't released by Limited Run, but it was released in Japan only. And the core of this game is that it's a tactical strategy RPG. Think of something like Fire Emblem, but worse. And this game is like stock standard when it comes to its game design. There is nothing stand out about this game whatsoever. It doesn't have a like great or unique art style. It's got easily one of the most generic stories I have ever seen. The writing, I don't know if I've read writing worse than this in a video game, and I've played some really terrible games. In fact, earlier this year, we played freaking Gungrave. That game had terrible writing, and by comparison, Gungrave looks like a masterpiece. But this literally is worse than some, like, fan fiction written by a 14-year-old, okay? Nothing about this game stands out besides how underwhelming it is. It's a game. It exists. I saw the credits. That's as much as I can say. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not like it runs bad or crashes or anything else, but there's nothing good about it either. Here's a good example of playing a game not when it came out and the difference that can feel for you. Number 5 is Devil May Cry 1 HD. I have the HD collection on Steam, and we played this game this year for the first time. I never played a Devil May Cry game. I missed them because I didn't own a PlayStation 2, and when I got a PlayStation 3, I just didn't care about the franchise anymore. I just played Bayonetta instead. And this game is bad, y'all. I understand that this is one of those, like, favorite classic games, and I imagine that this game was great in 2001 when it came out, right? Like, compared to the rest of the field that was available at the time, Devil May Cry 1 was probably amazing. But playing it for the first time in 2022 with the experience of modern game design and even things like Bayonetta, or even games that function a lot like Devil May Cry, Solstice, hello, released this year. It's a great game. I advise you to go play it. But this game is bad. This game is just bad. And it's not even any specific one thing, okay? It's cheesy. Like, the writing is cheesy. It's got kind of like that Metal Gear Solid type of cheese to it where you're like, I guess that was funny, or it's just kind of cringe, you know? But it's not even the issue. I will say, the camera is one of the worst things ever. Literally one of the worst cameras in video games that I have ever experienced. And there's a lot of bad cameras out there. The camera in Devil May Cry is absolutely one of the worst things I've ever experienced. But beyond that, the gameplay is fine. It's not, like, great. It's fine. It has some exciting moments. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it was really good back in the day. But today, it's just bad. Number 4 is Halo Infinite. Now, this one comes with, like, an asterisk on it of that it's probably gotten better today, but I never owned an Xbox growing up, ever. I was mostly a Nintendo kid. I got a PlayStation 3, and then after the PlayStation 3, I went into PC gaming, and then, of course, freaking bought Nintendo consoles to play their exclusives because I needed, like, my Legend of Zelda and Pokemon fix, right? But I mostly missed out on Halo. My only experiences with Halo were, like, playing, like, co-op campaign or, like, play a local arena PvP and stuff like at friends' houses that did own Xboxes. So Halo Infinite largely was the first, like, major Halo game that I played at release. which is probably a really bad thing because I started it when the multiplayer launched and the campaign wasn't out yet. I've still not played the campaign in Halo Infinite. But this game did so many things wrong. So many things wrong. It feels good to play, right? Plays well. Gunplay's good. Movement's good. Abilities and stuff are good. But at launch, when I played it, and I realized it launched late 2021, but I did continue playing it into 2022, which is why it's on this list. Also, the cutoff date's November 18th of last year to November 19th of last year to November 18th of this year, and I definitely played it within that time frame. It felt good to play, but that's all I could really say. It lacked content. There wasn't enough maps. There wasn't enough modes. There was so many options that I know existed in other Halo games that were not in this one. It lacked support from the developers. It lacked communication from the developers. It had continued issues all over the place. And it had so many missed opportunities. And that's not even to talk about the monetization of this game, which was horrendously bad, right? Because I know the way that you would unlock things and the customization options that you had in previous Halo games. And instead they're like, hey, what if we charged you an abhorrent amount for these not very good cosmetics that you can't even actually customize yourself in the way that you'd want? You can choose this color palette and it can be applied to this armor set, but you can't take those shoulder mounted missiles and that helmet and that chest and those emblems, and you can't make your own customizable set, and you can't customize the colors. Instead, we're going to really heavily limit everything that you can do, so that if you want to try and hit anything of your own level of self customization, you're going to need to unlock all of these things and buy these things and grind through the battle pass, which was atrocious, terrible, and had so little value in it. And then that was just all they gave us for like a year. And then finally, a year later, they were like, hey, I guess we could release some of the stuff that you guys want. And I know that like with the Forge update and the multiplayer update and stuff, that the game has gotten a lot better. I've seen people talk about it, but it's just so late. I don't have a desire to play this game anymore. I had fun, but I also have such a bad taste left in my mouth after everything that happened. And I just feel like this game tripped over its own feet. It had such an opportunity, this massive free-to-play Halo game that was available on multiple platforms, right? And you're like, yeah, here we go. And now it's just going to be an extremely memorable disappointment for me going forward. Catherine Full Body comes in at number 3. Now, I'm not going to say that this game is necessarily bad. It might have just really missed the mark with me, okay? If you like it, I can understand why you might like it. I didn't like it. This game is odd. Now, I'm not new to visual novels, okay? I played both of the AI, the Somnium Files games. I played Doki Doki Literature Club. I've pinned through parts of Steins Gate, didn't finish it. Danganronpa, didn't finish it. I like visual novels, but there's just something that feels wrong about this one, and it's not even necessarily like the tones that are in it, because there's a lot of sex type tones in this game. It's not a hentai game if you've not seen it or anything like that. It can feel like you might be getting to that point a couple of times, but then it just like fades to black and the scene changes and stuff. A lot of sex happens while the screen is black. You don't hear anything. Your main character, you wake up and you're like, holy shit, I slept with this woman. But that isn't the reason that it feels odd. And the reason that it feels odd is because in the visual novel games that I played, I felt like I was part of the visual novel. I didn't feel like I was watching an anime that occasionally I would hit a button to like change a dialogue option. I felt like, you know, you're playing a named character in these other games, and it feels like you have a level of control over that character. I didn't feel that way in Catherine Full Body. I felt like I was just being forced to watch Vincent be an idiot. And admittedly, I do not like watching somebody make mistakes. And it's not like, oh, I knocked over, you know, the glasses at work or something. Like, those truly embarrassing moments of like, you're a moron, or you got caught in a bad situation, or something doesn't look the way that it's supposed to, stuff like that. I don't like those. They make me uncomfortable. Like, me personally, not because like I'm in that situation, just like they make my skin crawl in a weird way. And this game lacks any form of genuine choice in terms of offering you options of the way that this story progresses. Yes, it lets you choose one of 3-ish with some asterisks on it, different endings, and I did get to an ending, and it's the one that I largely wanted to see. But it's just awkward, and it's really embarrassing at so many different points in its progression. And that's just the visual novel side of it. It actually has a gameplay side, which is this really awkward, like, block puzzle climbing game, and I did not like it. Okay, like the actual gameplay part of the puzzles and the stuff, I played it for, I don't know, a few hours, and then I just turned on the autocomplete option every time because I was just not enjoying those block puzzles that they use as the core types of gameplay. I actually just felt bad for finishing the game. Like, I got done and I felt bad about it, which is not something. It's one thing to finish a game and be like, thank God that's over. That game was terrible. I finished this game and I felt bad for finishing it. I'm gonna just stick to Persona. I mean, this whole art style and the team behind it and everything, it's Persona, and I know that there's even crossovers with the Catherine and the Persona cast with like outfits and like some like collaboration stuff. I'm just gonna stick to the Persona side of things, and I'm just gonna try and leave Catherine Full Body as far away from me as I can possibly manage to achieve. Number 2 is Scarlet Nexus. You know, when I'm thinking about Scarlet Nexus now for the purpose of this video, my brain just asked the question, like, why wasn't this game better? It feels like it just should have been better, and I don't know if they didn't have enough development time or enough money, or maybe there's development issues, maybe there were some people that were quarreling in terms of pulling the game in different directions. It's got a decent concept. It's got a really decent concept. It's like a really dark My Hero Academia with some really interesting world ideas. It's got good characters, and it's not even got a bad story either. It's just so weird, and I don't mean weird like, oh, it's super anime, man. You know, anime weeb stuff is all super weird. No, just like something feels weird about it. Like the way the story is told is strange. It's got these really major pacing issues, and not just even in the story. The combat looks nice, but it does not flow well. It wants to be a action RPG, but it doesn't achieve that because of the way that you lack the ability to like animation cancel and the way that some abilities interact with one another. It's like a fake turn-based battler. Like it wants you to think that it is an action RPG, but the fact that you can't cancel out of an attack animation to go into a dodge to avoid an attack means that you just kind of have to like wait and like block now and then attack. You're playing a turn-based game that is pretending to be an action RPG, and it doesn't make either of those modes feel well, because if you try to play it as turn-based-y stuff, then you just feel slowed down and locked down, but then if you try and play it like an action RPG, then you just get punished all over the place. But so much of it looks good and feels good when it works and sounds good. That said, the side content in this game, absolutely awful. The side missions, basically absent. They're really weird, and sometimes you just happen to complete them. I don't know what the issue here was. Something's wrong, and I'll say that, like, really, by the time we got about like 75% way through the game, I was just really ready for this game to be done, because it had so many good ideas and executed basically all of them extremely poorly. My worst game of 2022, which did release this year, is Valkyrie Elysium. Now, Valkyrie Elysium is almost a surprise release. They kind of were like, hey, we're releasing Valkyrie Elysium. And everyone's like, what the fuck is that? Oh, we're also going to re-release Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, and it's going to be available on consoles. And everyone's like, oh, cool. Square Enix, you care about the Valkyrie series? No, they don't. They absolutely do not. They basically shadow released Valkyrie Profile Lenneth after delaying it like 2 or 3 times, and Valkyrie Elysium has to be one of the greatest disappointments in video game history. This game is it is empty and devoid of substance, and there is almost nothing good to say about this game at all. It feels like it's a relative remake of Valkyrie Profile, like not a direct one-to-one, but that like what it's trying to achieve, but it doesn't achieve that in any meaningful way. The combat can be good, but it's not always good. And that's a very big problem, because there's nothing else in this game. There's a whopping like 6 characters, most of which only have maybe a dozen lines that they speak through the game. And So you're like, well, I hope the combat can keep up the lack of story and world building. It doesn't. I will say, when the combat is good, it's really good, okay? I will give it that one little nugget of when the combat is firing all cylinders. So good. But unfortunately, it only fires on half its cylinders 10% of the time and can only get all of those cylinders running maybe for 5 minutes out of every hour of gameplay, and this game is only 12 to 20 hours long, depending how much side content you do, if you really want to grind everything out. And that's if you're playing on hard, which we started on hard because easy, you just murk everything. And it makes me wonder what caused this game to exist in the way that it does. Because as we were playing it, we're like, man, this game feels unfinished. It feels like they had a really good combat system, and maybe it was like a prototype of a combat system for like Final Fantasy 16 or maybe even Forspoken or one of those other action RPGs that Square Enix has coming out, and then they ended up not going with it. But the team was like, but we there's something here, this is good. And then Square Enix tossed them $20. It was like, sure, throw it in a game, because they didn't want to abandon this good combat system. But it feels unfinished, and not like a janky release like we saw with like Cyberpunk 2077 or Final Fantasy 15, where on release you're like, whoa buddy, you needed more time. No, just like literally like they forgot to make 50% of the game. They polished everything else and then shipped it, and somebody went, hey, did you add in the NPC files to that build? And somebody went, there was NPC files? But yeah, because it's seriously, the best way I can describe Valkyrie Elysium is this game is lonely. And it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be lonely, but this game is absolutely lonely and is the worst game that I played in 2022. So that concludes our worst games that we played in 2022. Next week, we'll be talking about the best games that I played in 2022. That won't necessarily be my awards. I'm planning on trying to do that the week after to actually give some specific accreditation out to some particular titles that I definitely think mean it. But let me know what your thoughts are. What did you agree with? What did you not agree with? What games do you think should have been on this list? I obviously didn't play everything that came out in 2022, so I can only, present the games based off of the 60 games that I did manage to play. But what were some of your worst games that you played in 2022? I would love to hear from you. Put it down in the comments below. If you want to keep up the conversation elsewhere, I talk a lot and I'd love to talk some more. You can talk to me on Discord and Twitter. We do stream on Twitch, so if you want to go find us there, that'd be awesome. But we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. If you want to catch future videos, please subscribe to the channel. And if you watch one of the other videos on the channel, or if I see you in the live stream, thank you and enjoy.